free as a public service.
Retired South African Bishop Desmond Tutu was honored with the annual Fulbright Prize for his peace efforts. Poet Maya Angelou was among the speakers at this State Department ceremony that lasts about an hour 15 minutes.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the ceremony, the award ceremony for the 2008 J. William Fulbright Prize for International Understanding. On behalf of the Fulbright Association, I would like to thank Assistant Secretary of State for Educational and Cultural Affairs, Goli Ameri, for graciously hosting this ceremony, and to recognize the many staff members of the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs who have contributed so significantly to this event. We appreciate all you've done to get us here. We'd also like to thank our long-term partners who have so creatively and so generously supported the Fulbright Prize since its inception in 1993, the Coca-Cola Foundation. It is now my pleasure to introduce those who joined the Fulbright Association in presenting the 2008 prize. First, I'd like to introduce Assistant Secretary of State for Educational and Cultural Affairs, Goli Ameri. Goucher College Professor of Religion and Department Chair, Kelly Brown Douglas. Thank you. Chairman of the Board of Directors of the Coca-Cola Company, Neville Isdell. And now it is my great honor to present the 2008 Fulbright Prize laureate, Archbishop Desmond M. Tutu. As most of you know, the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs of the United States Department of State sponsors and manages Fulbright exchanges supporting more than 7,000 grantees in more than 150 countries around the world. The Fulbright Association is proud to be one of the Bureau's partner organizations. We are delighted to be welcomed by the Bureau's distinguished leader. Her education and accomplishments exemplify the Fulbright Exchange Program's principle of promoting understanding among peoples. Assistant Secretary of State for Educational and Cultural Affairs, Goli Ameri, is an entrepreneur, a businesswoman, and a distinguished public servant. Through her service to commissions, boards, and the United Nations, she has contributed to the advancement of human rights, women's issues, and education. Assistant Secretary Ameri, thank you for serving as our host this morning. Please.
Good morning, everyone. Suzanne, thank you so much for that lovely and gracious introduction. And most importantly, thank you for remembering to thank the wonderful staff of the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs. Archbishop Tutu, Dr. Angelou, Reverend Douglas, Mr. Isdell, Fulbright grantees and alumni, distinguished guests, friends, and supporters of the Fulbright program. It is truly my distinct pleasure on behalf of the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs of the U.S. Department of State to welcome you all here today to the department and to host the 2008 J. William Fulbright Prize for International Award ceremony and reception. And I'm delighted particularly to participate in today's celebration honoring Archbishop Tutu as the 2008 Fulbright Prize laureate. We are also privileged to have a number of important guests in the audience today. Ambassador Jendai Frazier, our Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs, ambassadors representing their countries in the United States, including Chile, Denmark, Indonesia, Jamaica, Kenya, Nigeria, Republic of Congo, and Senegal. And of course, my colleague, Mr. Tom Farrell, the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Academic Programs at the Bureau, and an alumnus of the Fulbright program himself. The Fulbright program, as we all know, is our government's best recognized and most emulated international exchange program, and with good reason. All of us here today and hundreds of thousands of people around the world are grateful to the late Senator William Fulbright for his ideas and ideals and the international exchange program that he created. The Fulbright Prize was established through the generosity of the Coca-Cola Foundation by the Fulbright Association, alumni of this prestigious program. Equally fitting, the most exciting is the selection of Archbishop Desmond Tutu as this year's Fulbright Prize recipient. Archbishop Tutu has dedicated his life to being a voice for the voiceless, leading the struggle against apartheid in South Africa and winning that battle, fostering a democratic society, and building community amidst diversity. And on the broader world stage, serving tirelessly as an activist for democracy, human rights, and civil society, including fighting against the scourge of poverty, HIV/AIDS, and tuberculosis. Archbishop Tutu, you have been a tremendous force for positive change and a true inspiration for all of us. We all salute you and thank you for your tremendous contributions. Intelligence, compassion, leadership, courage, conviction, perseverance, creativity, I can go on, are all traits embodied by Archbishop Tutu. And I believe they're exactly the same characteristics that Senator Fulbright envisioned when thinking about the types of people who should receive Fulbright scholarships. The Fulbright program, in a resolute and consistent way, has fulfilled our aspirations and enhanced international understanding for more than 60 years, promoting global awareness and competence, as well as an appreciation of the commonalities and the differences among peoples and cultures. When you really think about it, the Fulbright program is an amazing enterprise, not least because of its alumni and their accomplishments. The Fulbright legacy carries forward because of alumni like many of you sitting in this audience today, now numbering nearly 300,000 from 150 countries around the world, sharing your expertise, your experience, and your international understanding both professionally and personally, shaping people's opinions and broadening their worldview. Fulbright alumni are in positions of national and global prominence, and they are leaders in their neighborhoods, workplaces, communities, and societies. They're prime ministers and poets, scientists and senators, journalists and jurists, and of course, thousands of Fulbright alumni are educators providing millions of students with the benefit of an international perspective. Truly, my colleagues and I at the department, in sponsoring and managing the Fulbright program, see ourselves as stewards of a global trust. So my interests and objectives since coming to the department have been to build upon this foundation, ensuring that the Fulbright program and other exchange programs under my purview remain strong and vibrant. I'm working to accomplish that in 3 specific integrated ways. And if you will allow me, let me briefly share that with you. First, because of the strength of the alumni I just mentioned, we have launched and enhanced a comprehensive effort to engage alumni of our many different exchange programs, now numbering 1 million people around the world. We are doing this through our Bureau's Alumni Affairs Office and its robust alumni website. We are helping to establish alumni associations and networking and mentoring mechanisms, as well as by connecting our alumni to corporations and NGOs who can provide them with further opportunities. Participants and alumni of ECA's programs range from young high school students from very underserved communities to high-level government officials and business executives. From among these participants have come more than 46 Nobel Prize winners, over 1,500 cabinet-level ministers, and almost 400 current and former heads of state and government. So it's clear to me, and I'm sure to all of you, that continuing engagement with these committed individuals, and through them connecting to their families, their communities, friends, colleagues, and so many others, is just as important as engaging the next new exchange participant. My second priority has been to exploit new technologies and the cyberspace to become the master networker, connecting like-minded people, both exchange program alumni and larger publics, through the capabilities of the internet to form communities that enhance our exchange programs and promote mutual international understanding. Last month, we launched a more contemporary and interactive website for the Bureau, a website that includes the U.S. government's first online social networking space, and that address is connect.state.gov. I want you all to go there, please, and join that community. And I must say, it's a great source of pride, but it's also a little intimidating when you have the first U.S. government initiative in anything. Anyway, so this networking space helps us build a worldwide community of people that are dedicated to creating international understanding and dialogue. And to mark this step forward, we will conduct an online video contest to launch December 1st, right here in Washington, D.C., in order to hear more from young people about how they view their cultures and the world around them, and to open active channels of communications. And we hope that the Bureau's website can serve as the focal point for fostering a discussion of common values and interests. Third, we are expanding our partnerships with the private sector. Throughout its more than 50-year history, the Bureau has collaborated with private sector entities, including universities that send and host Fulbrighters and other exchange participants, and our cooperating partners who implement the myriad of our programs at the Bureau. We certainly applaud the Coca-Cola Company's strong commitment to international understanding, evident today through its sponsorship with the Fulbright Association of the J. William Fulbright Prize. So to take further advantage of these synergies that I just mentioned, we have launched an initiative to engage the private sector in sustainable public-private partnerships where we work together to provide additional opportunities to those who want to participate in these exchanges, be they academic scholarships, sports activities, or cultural initiatives. These partnerships will increase investment in human potential and local capacity, they will foster civil society, and they will strengthen our bilateral relations. So I'm proud to say that we are partnering with Dole in the Philippines and Freeport in Indonesia to expand our groundbreaking English Language Access Microscholarship Program for underserved children in those countries. And in a related effort, we are working with the private sector to develop an interactive multimedia online English language learning tool free of charge, which will be the first of its kind and will offer the kind of direct outreach that a new young global population demands. And as another example of the Bureau's engagement with the private sector, in October, in collaboration with the Avon Foundation, we co-sponsored a breast cancer global congress at which 40 international participants had a day-long meeting to discuss the global challenges of breast cancer. So, of course, each of these initiatives are important and each stands on its own merit, but they also serve to advance a larger goal: to use the transformational power of exchanges to open minds and societies, to foster mutual understanding, and to establish a firm foundation of trust upon which to work, and to keep our world safe, more peaceful, more prosperous, and more free. And I sincerely hope that you will all consider joining us in these efforts as we continue to expand and enhance our opportunities for interaction and exchange, and I hope many of you will come to me during lunch and tell me how you plan on helping us with the next steps. And so again, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you all for joining us today on this wonderful, wonderful occasion, and congratulations again to Archbishop Tutu.
Thank you so much, Assistant Secretary Mary, for your informative and inspiring remarks. We're really thrilled you could be with us today. The Fulbright Association partners with the State Department to serve visiting Fulbright students, teachers and scholars, and alumni in communities throughout the country. So we certainly welcome your emphasis on alumni programs, and we know how devoted you are to them. The Fulbright Association engages current and former Fulbright Exchange participants in lifelong experiences that advance international understanding through service to communities, citizen diplomacy, and dialogue on global issues. As a private, nonprofit, nonpartisan organization, we involve approximately 10,000 Fulbright alumni, current grantees and friends, and nearly 200 colleges and universities and international organizations in our work. We are pleased to have with us today the leaders of some of those institutions. We also welcome representatives of our 47 very lively chapters throughout the country, which organize the power of Fulbright alumni volunteers for more than 200 educational and cultural programs a year. An integral part of the Fulbright Association's mission is communicating to key constituencies, especially members of Congress, the vital role that Fulbright exchanges play in advancing our long-term national interest to increase mutual understanding and cooperation among nations. We truly appreciate the bipartisan support that the Fulbright program has always enjoyed, and we will continue to go on with our work as the organized alumni constituency for the Fulbright program, and we do this with vision and great vigor and enthusiasm. All of us who have received Fulbright grants know that people and nations must work to bridge cultural and other differences in order to promote peace and to improve the quality of life for all who share this planet. We believe in the Fulbright program's central role in achieving these goals, which are so aligned with the work of our 2008 Fulbright Prize laureate. It is now my pleasure to invite the Reverend Kelly Brown Douglas to the podium to deliver a personal tribute to Archbishop Tutu. Dr. Douglas.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the Fulbright Association and the Coca-Cola Foundation for the privilege of having the opportunity to say a word about Archbishop Desmond Tutu. The gift that I cherish most in the world is the gift of my son, so graciously given to me by God. And thus, that which is for me at once daunting and humbling is the trust that God has placed in me as a parent to raise this child to grow into all he can be indeed as a child of God. And so it is that 15 years ago, when my husband and I considered the task in front of us, we knew that there would be no better person to accompany us on our journey as parents, and thus to be a guide and model for our son, than Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And so it is that we asked him if he would be the godfather to our child. For we knew that if my son got to know the person that we knew, then he would have no better model of what it meant to be a man of God. For to know Desmond Tutu is to know a man who is disciplined about his disciplines. This is a man who does not take for granted his spiritual fitness. And so it is that no matter what is going on around him, he takes the time to practice his disciplines of prayer, meditation, retreat, and even communion, so to nurture and to grow in his relationship with God, so that he may become a better disciple of God. Yes, he is disciplined about his disciplines. And so it is as well that Archbishop Tutu is also a man who is exempting of exemption. How easy it would be, given the awards, rewards, and honors that have come his way, given the worldwide celebrity which he enjoys, how easy it would be for him to say, live in to the hype, and to see himself as just a cut above his fellow human beings, to see himself as better than, but not Archbishop Tutu. As exemplary as he may be, he exempts himself from being exempted from his humanness. He is humble. He knows himself to be no better, no different than any other of God's children. None is lesser than he, and he is greater than none. All are children of God and should act as such and be treated as such. And so it is that he is exempting of his exemption from who he is as a human being. And to know Desmond Tutu is to know a man who is sold on soul food. Ah, yes, he does like the finger-licking, rich-tasting, high blood pressure raising, and cholesterol-building cuisine of soul. But this is not the soul food about which I am talking. That is the food that you take into your body to feed your body. No, the food I am talking about is the food that comes from your soul to feed the world and to feed the world's people. It is the food you put out, not take in. And so it is that Archbishop Tutu consistently feeds the world with the food of his kind, loving, empathetic, peaceful soul. And so, yes, Archbishop Tutu is a man who is sold on soul food. And he is also a man who is morally moral. To put another way, to know Desmond Tutu is to know a man who does not moralize about his morals. Rather, he lives into his sense of goodness, earnestly, not arrogantly. And so while he may express righteous anger, he does not pass self-righteous judgment on others. And so it is that he is moral about his morals, exuding a character of integrity, not indignity. To know Archbishop Tutu is to know also a man who is opportunistic about his opportunities. He tries to capture every opportunity before him to be a glimpse, even if just a wee small glimpse, of God's compassion, love, justice, and peace in a world so sorely in need of knowing compassion, love, justice, and peace. And so it is that Desmond Tutu is as well a man who is nagging about the nagging. To know the Archbishop is to know that as God nags the world about its unkindness, about its injustice, hate, and wars, so too does the Archbishop. As long as the arc of the world is still bending toward truth and has not yet quite gotten there, well, the Archbishop will keep nagging the world to be better and to bend just a little more until it reaches its goal. And so it is. To know him is to know a man who is nagging about the nagging. And so ultimately, to know Archbishop Desmond Tutu is to know a man who does nothing less than dare the daring. He dares to live in to God's daring world. He dares to live into a world where all of God's children, with all of their diverse richness of being, are treated equally with kind, merciful, gracious respect for their God-given humanity. With bold courage, Archbishop Tutu lives his life as if the kingdom of God is here. And so he dares to make it present in the places and spaces which God has allowed him to be. He dares to live the daring. And so it was that 15 years ago, when I was gifted with the privilege of raising a son, yes, I asked the Archbishop if he would be his godfather, to which he graciously consented. But I asked him as well if my son could bear his name. And so it is that my son's name is Desmond. Several years ago, my son asked me why we named him Desmond. I told him because Desmond was a name he could be proud of. I told him it was an honorable name that would pull him toward the best of whomever God had created him to be. I told him it was the name of his godfather. To know the name Desmond is to know the name of a man who is a disciplined, exempting, soulful, moral, opportunistic, nagging, daring man of God, Desmond Tutu. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The Fulbright Prize was created to recognize those who have made outstanding contributions toward furthering mutual understanding among peoples and who have helped break barriers that divide mankind. I should say humankind. My feminist friends would kill me for saying that. That divide humankind. Fulbright Prize laureates exemplify the purpose of the Fulbright International Education and Cultural Exchange Program. Since 1993, the Fulbright Prize has been awarded to a distinguished group of world leaders. In fact, 4 Fulbright Prize laureates, Nelson Mandela, Jimmy Carter, Kofi Annan, and Marty Ahtisaari, were later named Nobel Prize laureates. The Nobel Committee, however, beat us in honoring our current laureate, who was recognized in 1984 with the Nobel Peace Prize. This year's Fulbright Prize Selection Committee Chairman, Dr. Craig Barrett, Chairman of the Board of Intel Corporation, was joined in his work by a distinguished international committee that's recognized in your program. We are very proud that one of the committee members, Suzanne Snively, has come all the way from New Zealand to join us today because Archbishop Tutu is a special friend to that country. Indeed, he is a friend and mentor to people all over the world. In his leadership of the South African Council of Churches during the apartheid era, in his tenure as chairman of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission that grappled with that era's human rights violations, and in his current work to alleviate the suffering caused by HIV/AIDS, Archbishop Desmond M. Tutu has spoken and acted as a person of extraordinary empathy and principle. His moral voice has been heard and heeded throughout the world. Therefore, for his tireless drive to reconciliation and peace in his homeland and throughout the world, for his courage in speaking out against injustice wherever he has found it, for his efforts to achieve just societies without racial divisions, and for his compassion in alleviating suffering, we are honored to present the 2008 Fulbright Prize to Archbishop Emeritus Desmond M. Tutu. Please join me in congratulating Archbishop Tutu.
Ladies and gentlemen, the chairman of the board of the Coca-Cola Company, Mr. Neville Isdell.
Good morning, everyone. It is my really great pleasure to introduce someone for whom the term Renaissance woman is not an hyperbole, but a statement of fact. Let me introduce to you Maya Angelou. She is indeed many things: actress, singer, dancer, director, producer, playwright, screenwriter, educator, and poet, and even more. Because she shares a universal wisdom from her own personal experience. For her own story gives all her works such immense power, and it's because it's a story of courage, of transcending challenges to build a new and a hopeful future. Acting led her to write her own material, and as fortune would have it, it led to an introduction to James Baldwin, who heard her stories, the stories of her childhood, and urged her to write them down. That led to her very first volume, her autobiography, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, which changed the landscape of possibilities for African American female authors. We all know that over the years the scope of her work has grown, reaching across media, across generations, across circumstances, across races, and across geographies. No matter what form her words take, all of her work testifies to her own great courage and the power of individuals to overcome obstacles. And she once said, and I quote, "We may encounter many defeats, but we must not be defeated. We are much stronger than we appear to be, and maybe much better than we allow ourselves to be." End of quote. So who better to voice a poetic tribute to our honoree on this day than our special guest, Dr. Maya Angelou. Thank you.
When it looked like the sun wasn't gonna shine anymore, God put a rainbow in the clouds. That statement, really shred from a 19th century slave song, was inspired by a statement in Genesis. We are told that rain had persisted so unrelentingly that it seemed it would never cease. And in an attempt to put the people at ease, God put a rainbow in the sky. Well, that's in Genesis. But in the 19th century, some African-American lyricist, poet, maybe a woman, I'm not sure about that, said that God put the rainbow not just in the sky, but in the clouds themselves. We know that suns and moons and stars and novae and all sorts of illuminations are always in the firmament. But the clouds can so lower and lower that the viewer cannot see the light. But if the light is put into the clouds themselves, that means there's a possibility of seeing light, of seeing hope. I speak largely for the Fulbright Foundation. I thank you very much for all the light you've shown on so many people all over the world. Thank you. And I thank our honoree for being a rainbow in so many people's clouds during some terrible times, times that will not bear the actual telling of themselves, times so particular, so demeaning, so horrid, that one can't believe human beings inflicted this on human beings. And all that time, Desmond Tutu was a rainbow in the clouds, lighting up, making people think there's a possibility not only of living through this, of surviving, but even thriving. There's a possibility to thrive with some passion, some compassion, some style. We have been friends many years, and I have looked to him for inspiration, and I've never found it wanting. I thought of a number of things to say about him. So many things will be said, positive things. I thought I'd like to read a short poem, not my poem. It was written by the great poet, Mr. Robert Hayden, who really was a sort of poet and a poet laureate. He wrote this for Frederick Douglass. I say this to Bishop Desmond Tutu with thanks, humble thanks. You know me, I have no modesty at all. It's a learned affectation. But I do pray for humility, where it comes from within out. It's not stuck on like a decal. And humbly I thank you. In the name of the Shonas, the Xhosas, the Zulu, I thank you. I thank you in the name of the Johnsons and the Williams and the Feinberg. I thank you for the Chus and the Chows and the Miokotos. I thank you for all people all over the world. Thank you. Not only have you lived through it, you're teaching us to be better, to not just live, but to also forgive. To forgive. It is so difficult to do that. Some of us would rather have the grudge because we're ignorant. But you show us how uncommon common sense is. And I thank you. When it is finally ours, this freedom, this liberty, this beautiful and terrible thing, needful to man as air, usable as earth, when it belongs at last to all, when it is truly instinct, brain matter, diastole, systole, reflex action, when it is finally one, when it is more than the gaudy mumbo-jumbo of politicians, this man, this Desmond Tutu, this former prisoner in his own country, this man, beaten to his knees, sometimes exiled almost into fear, but never to fear, visioning a world where everyone could be free, where none is lonely, none hunted, none alien. This Desmond Tutu, superb in love and logic, will be remembered, not with statutes rhetoric, not with legends and poems and even wreaths of stone and bronze, but with the lives that have grown out of his life, the lives that are yet to grow out of your life. The young Desmond is just one of millions who will grow out of your life, fleshing out your dream of this wonderful, beautiful, necessary thing. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Angelou, for that beautiful tribute. Doesn't she wear her affectation well? Now, on behalf of all of us at the Coca-Cola Company, it is my really deep honor to say a few words about Archbishop Tutu and to present him with a very special sculpture. As you know, the Coca-Cola Foundation has long supported the Fulbright Prize for International Understanding, and I've been privileged to stand here in the past to present a statue to other awardees. In fact, back in 1993, I had the pleasure of presenting this award to Nelson Mandela. And when we were in the green room beforehand, swapping stories about South Africa and his love of boxing and the like, I did say to him that the sculpture, and it was a different one on that occasion, was extremely heavy, and I suggested that he should not raise it above the dais which it stood. Well, of course, he came in on stage. I passed it on to him, and he lifted it high above his head. Well, that was the last time that I'm ever going to tell a Fulbright laureate that there's something they should not do. And I know that if there was ever anyone who you should not say that to, it is Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And of course, by their very nature, these are men and women who have changed our world because they did not accept the limits that others tried to put upon them. These are leaders who used their strengths, their strength of character, the strength of conscience, to create a new reality and a more hopeful world. And you know that describes today's honoree. On a very personal level, and this is personal, I've seen the remarkable transformation in South Africa that Desmond Tutu has helped create. I attended college at the University of Cape Town at a time when Nelson Mandela was being imprisoned on Robben Island. I saw a government that ignored basic humanity that all of us should share. I marched in protest, and I wrote editorials as editor of the university newspaper. A very small and inconsequential voice, but something nonetheless of which I am personally proud. But when Desmond Tutu spoke out, his words echoed right around the world and brought an immoral system literally to its knees. In fact, he would have fully have earned this honor for his fight against apartheid alone. But of course, he did not stop there. As chairman of the South African Truth and Reconciliation Commission, he heard stories of the worst inhumanity. And yet, he calmly interrogated, and he emerged from that, not with bitterness, but with a wonderful sense of forgiveness. History tends to record what happened. In this instance, it should record what did not happen. It was because of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission that what many had predicted would happen in terms of being no forgiveness for the most terrible crimes did not result in conflict within South Africa. He made that happen. From war-torn countries to poverty-stricken communities, Desmond Tutu walks into darkness, and he always finds the light. He sees the very best in people as he absolutely confronts the worst in people. You can't look at his life's work, at his campaigns for human rights, his efforts against TB and as a voice against HIV and AIDS, and not come away so hopeful about tomorrow. His positions, of course, are not always safe. They're certainly not always popular, but they're always fearless and incredibly powerful. And perhaps we think about it, he's never stopped working because he recognizes that the story of human dignity is always a work in progress. It's one of my favorite quotes from Archbishop Tutu, where he said, I quote, "My humanity is bound up in yours, for we can only be human together." End of quote. Now, in just a few minutes, I'm going to ask the Archbishop to step up to receive the award that you see on the dais there. And I want to present to the Archbishop a unique sculpture which actually has a unique history of its own. In 1991, construction crews in Lower Manhattan uncovered a graveyard which turned out to be an African burial ground that dated back to somewhere in the early 1700s. It was designated as a National Historic Landmark, and Barbara Chase Rebu was commissioned to create a commemorative sculpture. She created Africa Rising. It pays homage to the struggle for freedom from bondage in this country. And just as important, it expresses the interrelationship of all races and all backgrounds. In New York City today, you can visit the original sculpture, which is some 15 feet tall. So I didn't bring that along today. And you couldn't raise it above your head, Archbishop. But we have commissioned a smaller version. And we selected it because it honors what you have done so many times in your life. Found a place of injustice and used your words and your example to create a vision of tomorrow. A vision of hope that is, like Africa, rising. So on behalf of the Coca-Cola Company and the Fulbright Association, Archbishop Tutu, I would like to present to you the sculpture Africa Rising.
I'm not going to try and raise it.
Please. We'll do a few photographs here. Here we go. We'll do it together. We'll put it down. There we go. Thank you. I give you the podium. Thank you very much, Bishop. You want some more photographs?
Very, very distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, undersecretaries, presidents, alumni, I'm going to get it wrong, friends. What a wonderful, wonderful privilege. What a great honor. And thank you, Kelly, for your kind words. And in her absence, Maya, thank you. It does help to have this kind of complexion, because when you're blushing, nobody notices. Thank you very much for the honor. I always say I receive such honors really in a representative capacity, because the people you really do want to honor are the many, many millions who gave one the privilege of being their leader. After all, what is a leader without followers? And when you are in a crowd, I usually say, it is only because you stand out for those who carry you on their shoulders. And so on behalf of these extraordinary people who surprised the world in 1994, on behalf of the many who have often been faceless, anonymous, it is a very great privilege to accept this prestigious award. Now, I usually say to people, don't go away saying, oh, isn't he nice? He's so modest. I'm nothing of the sort. I tell the story of how my wife and I went to West Point Military Academy on an official visit, and at the end of the visit, the cadets gave me a cap to commemorate the visit. And I tried the cap on and it didn't fit. Now, a nice wife would have said, oh dear, the cap is too small. Leah said, his head is too big. You sent a Fulbright scholar once to South Africa. She came from Stanford University, had been involved in the anti-apartheid movement. She went to South Africa to work at the University of the Western Cape. Her name was Amy Beale. One day she took one of her African colleagues back home in one of the townships, black townships of Cape Town. It was at the height of the tensions and the ghastlinesses of apartheid. And she drove into the township with her friend. There was a mob of youngsters who belonged to one of our liberation movements, And they had a rather blood-curdling slogan: one settler, one bullet. They saw Amy with her black colleague, and they stormed the car. She got out, tried to escape. They caught up with her, and they killed her gruesomely, stabbing her and stoning her to death. Two of the ringleaders of this group were arrested and sentenced to long terms of imprisonment. Come the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and the two applied for amnesty. The victim or the victim's family had the right to oppose the granting of amnesty or to support it. Amy Beale's parents came all the way from California to Cape Town to the amnesty hearing where these two young men were applying to be granted amnesty. Linda Beale and Peter, which since died, came. And Peter, when he was given the opportunity to speak, said, "We believe that Amy is looking down at us, and Amy would have wanted us to support the granting of amnesty. And so, yes, we support this application for amnesty by these two." You had there two sides of our human nature. The two young men representing the darker side of all of us, the side that is capable of some of the worst atrocities. For those who commit such atrocities as the Holocaust, genocide, or whatever, don't have horns sprouting from their foreheads. They don't have tails tucked away. The ordinary human beings like you and me, that we, each of us, have this capacity for evil. And the other side, this incredible side about each one of us, that each one of us, yes, quite exhilaratingly, has the capacity for good. And so Peter and Linda Beale supported the granting of amnesty, which it was done. And you'd have thought that that was an amazing example of human magnanimity, of generosity of spirit. And they could have won all kinds of prizes for their willingness to forgive those who had killed their daughter as gruesomely as this group had done. But it wasn't all. They then went on to found the Amy Beale Foundation to work especially with the young people in the township in which their daughter had met this awful death. And you know, they appointed these two, their daughter's murderers, as employees. They had various community development projects, a bakery, something, whatever, to salvage these kids from the consequences of poverty and deprivation. And they appointed one of these to head up the operations. Human beings are quite extraordinary. You and I, quite rightly, are appalled. Just now, I mean, you turn on your television and you hear of the ghastlinesses that are happening in Eastern Congo, where rape is used as a weapon. You see those distressing images of kids seemingly disorientated, running helter-skelter. You think of Darfur, you think of Burma, you think of Tibet, you think of Zimbabwe, you think of Gaza, you think about all of those ghastly things, and you're appalled. And quite rightly. And that is one of the best pieces of evidence that evil is not the norm. Because if it had been, you and I would probably, all we would do is to shrug our shoulders and say, tough luck. We don't usually. We know that things ought to be different. And there are so many occasions when, yes, we feel good about being human. It's not a royal we. It's we, a thing called the elders went to Darfur, and one of the extraordinary things there, I mean, you haven't seen squalor if you've not been to Darfur. You've not seen deprivation. You've not seen awfulness, just awfulness. People live in sheds built out of sand that don't keep out the heat of the sun. They don't keep out the cold. And certainly they don't protect you from the stray bullets. And you wonder as you look how families can have privacy, how parents can have intimacy. And we called together the so-called internally displaced persons to speak to them. And you tell a story, and they could laugh. They could laugh. And you look around and you say, where do they get the capacity to do so? And the men, Muslim men wearing white robes, spotless. And you look around and you say, I mean, there's not water here. I mean, how come they can? And you realize, yes, I mean, there is something about us, a resilience, something about us that makes us laugh, yeah, even in the midst of this furnace of awfulness. But the other thing that we took away with us was extraordinary commitment of the humanitarian workers. We hardly ever hear stories about them. It may be that sometimes, yes, when maybe they are attacked, that then we hear. But no one has seemed to want to tell their story. Because most of them come from lands where they could live comfortably, safely. And here they are. And a number of them come repeatedly. Come to this place where women run the risk of being abducted. And you say, hey, yeah. Incredibly, you and I turn out as those who have been made for goodness. Hey? We're made for goodness. That the aberration is the evil. Goodness is what you and I are made for. Like, you remember those experiments that they used to get us to do in biology? Grow a plant in a dark box, and you open a little hole, and the light streams in, and that plant grows towards the light. We were told, I don't know, in phototropism, or the tree with its roots growing towards the water. Now you and I we have a particular tropism, that we are made for goodness. That is why in a world where people tend to be so cynical, hard-nosed, for whom the bottom line is the be-all and end-all, isn't it extraordinary that the ones we most admire, in fact, revere, are not the macho, the aggressive, the successful. Now, I don't have anything against success. But it is interesting. It is interesting. You ask people, who are the people you admire? Dalai Lama, Mother Teresa, Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, the Dalai Lama. I was with him in Seattle a few months ago. 60,000 people turned out to hear him. 60,000 to listen to someone who can't even speak English properly. I don't get me wrong. I'm not jealous. No. I mean, here is someone who's been turfed out of his beloved Tibet for 50 years, who has an incredible bubbling joy and serenity. Actually, I say to me, hey, look here, the cameras are on us now, try to behave like a holy man. Mother Teresa, you could say a lot of things about her. Macho would not be one of them. And she's not even a success. Because she tried to build and redeem all of those derelicts. And yet the world says, yeah, Mandela. I mean, if he walked in here, virtually everybody's knees go a little wonky. It is actually because you and I and all of us are these incredible creatures who, being finite, are made for the infinite. St. Augustine of Hippo says, God, thou hast created us for thyself, and our hearts are restless until they find their rest in thee. That you and I, as somebody has put it, have a God-shaped space, and only God can fill that space. I finish. Yes, I know you're looking at your watches. It's a story that I repeat, but even if I have to say so, it is a lovely story. It's not original. I'm very unoriginal, actually. But it's this lovely story of a farmer who had chickens in his backyard. But he noticed that there was a strange-looking chicken. I mean, it was a chicken like other chickens, packed away. But no, it wasn't quite like these other chickens. And so, a traveler comes along and he says, no, man, that's no chicken, man. That's an eagle. And the farmer says, so what? Yeah, well, yeah, okay. So this guy says, give me that strange-looking chicken. And he gives him the strange-looking chicken. And he takes it and he goes and he climbs the mountain and waits for the sun to rise. And as the sun rises, he says to the strange-looking chicken, fly, eagle, fly. And this chicken shakes itself and puts out its pinions and lifts up. And it soars and flies and disappears away into the distance against the rising sun. Well, God says to us, hey, you are no chicken. You are an eagle. Fly, eagle, fly. And God wants you to shake yourself, spread out your pinions, and lift off and soar towards laughter, joy, soar towards compassion and caring, soar towards transcendence and goodness. Fly, eagle, fly.
Thank you so much, Archbishop Tutu. I think you've left us all with soaring spirits. We thank you so much for being here. I'm afraid to say that this concludes the 2008 Fulbright Prize Award ceremony. We thank all of you so much for being here to help us mark this historic occasion. I would just ask that you remain in your seats for the moment as the official party from the stage leaves. And then please feel free to enjoy one another's company. It's just a pleasure to see all of you here. Thank you so much.
Welcome to Book TV.